Welcome to Creative Power, a podcast designed to help you claim the full spectrum of your creative potential. I'm Camilla Fellis-Arnold, and I'm passionate about discussing how we change the face of both the creative industries and how we interact with creativity itself, so that it nourishes our soul and helps us express ourselves with alignment, flow, and authenticity. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 8 of Creative Power. If you are someone that has set yourself a New Year's resolution, then first things first, I hope you're still keeping at it and finding it easy to embed it into your daily routine. And if you need a few tips to help you keep that consistent habit, then skip back a couple of episodes and listen to episode 6, where I shared my top 5 tips for building a daily practice. One thing that you might be feeling come up as a result of your New Year's resolution, though, is impostor syndrome. Perhaps you've committed to this year being the year you write your book or build your business and put yourself right out there. And then the fear pops up. And a million different reasons start flooding your head about why you definitely shouldn't do this. That, my friend, is imposter syndrome. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. You know that feeling when you get really excited about doing something? Maybe it's a dream business idea or a plan to take up a new hobby, and you are absolutely buzzing. You feel raring to go, you're happy, full of confidence and momentum. It is all you can think about, and you can't wait to get started. But after a little while, the excitement starts to wear off. You feel the doubt creeping in. Your thoughts turn to, am I good enough? Or, who am I to do this? You start talking yourself out of it before you've even really tried. What you are hearing is an internal monologue of criticism and rejection, often based on past experiences. They come from all sorts of places, such as beliefs, habits, expectations, and attitudes of those around you. It could come from the witch wound, persecution complex, being a creative outcast, cultural appropriation, DNA memories and epigenetics, collective trauma, and judgments passed around being a woman, being artists, being Black, Indigenous, or people of colour, and so many more places. And some of these I will be digging into in more detail in future episodes. But ultimately, fear is the ego's way of keeping you safe by reminding you what happened last time. When in reality, all it really does is make you feel rubbish. You lose your enthusiasm, your creative power, and it stops you in your tracks. Because that's where it's safe for your ego. That's what it knows. If you keep going out of your comfort zone, your ego, your brain, doesn't know what's out there. Could be man-eating bears for all it knows. You see, the brain and the ego, or that flight or fight response, can't tell the difference. They will act like starting a business and failing at it is the end of the world. That failing is going to cause you as much physical pain as cutting your arm off. Because to be honest, lots of things that we do now don't relate to where these instincts originate from. But our brains don't know that. And our brains definitely don't have a map for it. So it makes us feel like writing a book and sharing it with the world is going to kill us. Because the last time we were this scared, we were living in caves and being chased and eaten by bears. Someone forgot to give our brain the memo that things are a bit, and by a bit I mean a lot, different now. Because at the heart of it all We want to be accepted. When you decide you're going to do something that stretches you out of your comfort zone, your brain then panics because it's hardwired to seek approval from others. Back in the days of cave people, going against everyone could get you kicked out of the tribe and left to fend for yourself. And as a child, back in the days of the cave people, we were relying on our parents and our caregivers to fulfill our needs. Upsetting them could mean that they reject you and stop caring for you, leading to your eventual death. No wonder we want to be accepted by everyone. Our brain still thinks that rejection could get us killed. Not only that, but when you really believe in something and you put your heart and your soul into it, it is personal. Especially when it comes to creative pursuits such as writing or making art. Remember in episode 4 when I talked about Meraki? We leave a little piece of ourselves in what we do, so other people judging your efforts can feel like a direct judgment of you. People say things every day that we can interpret in all sorts of ways. And sometimes we interpret what they say as criticism or rejection regardless of how it was originally meant. At that moment, it can feel impossible not to take the criticism personally. It can feel like a personal attack, a rejection of yourself and who you are. And as soon as we start rejecting ourselves, hello, impostor syndrome. All of these little moments add up, so that when we're alone, our internal monologue will start using those comments and ideas to fuel our insecurities. We convince ourselves that there's truth in them and that we will be found out any minute. Cue more imposter syndrome. The brain anticipates the emotional pain of rejection and criticism, and this can stop you in your tracks, or it can make you give up completely. It can make your mundane reality, much as you hate it, but it can make that mundane reality look more attractive than taking a risk with no guarantee of a payoff. Every time we choose to stay in our comfort zone and not follow our dreams, a little piece of you dies inside. You know those lost souls from Disney Pixar's 2020 film Soul? That's what happens every time you turn away from something that lit a spark within you. And it sucks. I know, because I've been there myself, plenty of times. Every business that I've started, every creative avenue I've tried to go down, I hear that niggling voice in the back of my head saying, "Oh, but what if you fail?" I even heard it, and still hear it in terms of recording and sharing this podcast. The voice in my head says things like, "Camilla, what if no one likes it? What if it's not any good? What if it is all just self-indulgent twaddle and doesn't actually help anyone?" Yet, here I am, still doing it. And I want to share a few tips with you that have really helped me keep doing it. Luckily, these days, we're not going to die as a result of doing the scary things. And we can also look for a tribe worldwide now that will support us and accept us. We don't want to let this stuff stop us in our tracks. So how can we reframe it into something positive? My first tip is to remember that confidence builds along the way. No one has a magic wand to poof ultimate confidence into existence. What we can do is work on our subconscious limiting beliefs, fear and resistance. But even that doesn't happen overnight. I know, because I've been solidly working on my emotional baggage for the last 1.5 years, and I'm now at the point where things happen much quicker now, because I have much less resistance in the space. To begin with, even showing up for just one session with my holistic practitioner felt like climbing Mount Everest. No joke. Honestly, Emily Tuck, who I've been working with, has been so patient with me, and I am forever grateful to her. And as an aside, if you feel like this is something you want to address and need support and tools that have, transformed how I approach fear as it comes up, I highly recommend Emily, and I'll leave a link in the show notes so that you can find her. But here's the other thing about confidence. Sometimes you just have to get on and do it. We can postulate all we like on what the obstacles are and what is in the way, but sometimes we do need a little bit of tough love. You can stand on the edge of that metaphorical cliff all you like, but one day, if you want something to change, you're going to need to jump off. I'm not saying it's not important to work through our limiting blocks and beliefs, not at all. It's a fundamental part of the process, and also, so is getting into action, because you'll never know unless you try. You'll never wake up and magically be the most confident or knowledgeable person in the world. We all need to start somewhere. And before you go back chatting me and say, yeah, but Camilla, what about people who are simply gifted? Yeah, that may be so. But they will still take time refining what they do. Think of any artist that you like and their most famous and lauded painting. Was it the first thing they ever painted? Of course it wasn't. Confidence builds along the way. I can feel it myself with this podcast. With every episode, I feel more comfortable in the space. I feel more confident being my authentic self. Confidence builds. I learned from coach Melanie Ann Leah recently that confidence is courage compounded. That courage is acting in spite of the fear. And we keep acting, we keep having courage, and that compounds into confidence. Confidence builds. And here's the other thing. That fear you have will still be there, whether you do the thing or not. Let me give you myself as an example with this podcast. And I'm using this as an example to show you that it's really fresh. It's what I'm living with every day, and it doesn't go away. Every episode, I wonder if anyone will listen, or how I will get more people to listen. That one is a given, because it's a new podcast. But also, I wonder if I'm going to run out of things to talk about. Am I going to run out of ideas? How long can I keep this up? What do I do if no one listens and I'm speaking into the void? Do I continue or give up? What if I'm talking out of my arse this whole time, and while everyone who has listened has been so lovely and kind with their feedback, what if they're just saying that because they know me and they want to make me feel better? What if actually it is really rubbish? I mean, hopefully it's not, and you're still listening, otherwise I'm going to be sad. But all of that is part of my internal monologue whenever I'm thinking about this podcast. It's all still there while I'm making it. And a year down the line, those thoughts will change as I continue working on this. They might sound something like, how can I ever top my most downloaded episode? What can I say that's original and fresh? Are people bored with me yet? How do I get more listeners? Should I be doing something different? Because I just saw Sally was doing something and I thought her episode sounded so much better than the one I did last year on that same topic. Like, you can see it just goes on. You see what I mean? The fear of the unknown is still there. It's just saying different things. Elizabeth Gilbert wrote something in Big Magic on this that has really stayed with me. And as an aside, I highly recommend reading Big Magic to all of my creative clients, because the way that she explains creativity gives many of us a language for what we understand innately about it but can't always express. It's a good read. But what she says about fear is that we don't let it drive us. You can let fear come with you in the car for whatever you're doing or making, but don't let it drive. Don't let it hold the map or use the GPS. In fact, I'd say stick it in the back seat with some snacks and you get on driving. The point she's making is this: don't try and avoid the fear. Let it walk the journey with you. It's going to be there anyway, whether you do something or not. So acknowledge its existence. But don't let it have a say in what you do or where you go. So what I do on those days when I'm having a wobble is I acknowledge the fear. I give myself a minute to breathe and feel into what specifically am I feeling fearful about. This can be tough because when we feel fearful, our emotional intelligence and ability to think clearly falls through the floor. So pinpointing the exact issue isn't always easy. If you have a trusted friend, coach, therapist or practitioner that can hold the space for you and explore the deeper underlying issue with you, that's going to be really helpful in those times. You could also journal on the fear and see what comes out of a free writing exercise, or answer the question, what am I afraid of? And just keep writing and writing until you run out of steam and see what comes out of it. If you're feeling really triggered and stressed, a quick and simple thing to do is hold your emotional stress release, ESR points, to help you release the stress. You simply use a feather-light touch with your fingers on your forehead. It's about a finger's width above each eyebrow, and you think about the stress, the fear, the overwhelm, whatever it is. I have a lot of trouble personally with my mind racing and whirring, so whenever that happens, I'll just sit and put my fingers lightly on my forehead, touching these points, and I'll just keep thinking about the stress, letting it whir. And then after a few minutes, I do feel much calmer. And in the show notes, Emily Tuck has very kindly shared a visual that I'm going to link for you to see, that shows you exactly where these ESR points are if you need to be able to visualize it. There's plenty of other tools you can use to work on releasing the fear at a subconscious level, like EFT tapping or hypnosis, but I do recommend that you do this with a therapist or practitioner of some kind to support you. Don't try this at home alone, folks. As I come to the end of this episode, I think it's important to remember that we are all in this boat when it comes to fear and feeling like an imposter. We all experience it regardless of where we are on our journey. And as you can see from this episode, it's perfectly normal to feel like that. It's part of our makeup. It's what makes this a human experience. You are not crazy, and you are certainly not alone in feeling like this. Heck, you wouldn't believe the meltdown that I've had even trying to plan out this episode on imposter syndrome and fear. In fact, being vulnerable and sharing this part of the story too is really important, because it's how we normalize being afraid but still being in action. It's how we break the stigma around getting help for our subconscious underlying issues. It's what makes this authentic and helps us connect with one another, because I've been sharing my thoughts and my internal monologue around this podcast, and I'm being really real with it and sharing that deep vulnerability and insecurity with you here. Yes, fear is sitting in my car, but I am still the one who is driving. Are you going to take back the wheel from fear and start driving too?
Thanks for listening to Creative Power today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and consider leaving a review. To find out more ways you can connect or work with me, please visit www.camillafellisarnold.com/creative power.